Our text today is found in Psalm 63. It says, a psalm of David when he was in the desert of Judah. And he writes this, "You are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. I've seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live. And in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips my mouth will praise you. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. Those who want to kill me will be destroyed. They will go down to the depths of the earth. They will be given over to the sword and become food for jackals. But the king will rejoice in God. All who swear by God will glory in him, while the mouths of liars will be silenced." This is the word of the Lord.
The church father, St. Augustine, widely regarded as like one of the most influential theologians and thinkers in church history at large, begins his autobiography titled Confessions with this classic and timeless quote. He said, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." It's one of my favorite quotes. If you stick around, you'll probably hear me quote it again. And it's a favorite because I have found it to be true. I have put this quote to the test and found it to be true in my own life. And there's something encouraging and inspiring about it. But I also like this quote because it is deeply challenging. It's challenging because it forces me to question whether I still find this quote to be true. Sure, I have felt that way at one point previously. Sure, at one point I resonated with that quote. But do I actually believe that there's nothing else that will satisfy my restless heart than God himself? It sounds nice. It's a beautiful quote. But do I relate to it? And do you relate to it? Psalm 63 is a psalm of desire, of where we aim, the desires of our restless hearts. And let me just tell you a little bit of my own kind of wrestling through this psalm this week. Studying it, thinking about it, meditating on it, reading it, wrestling through Psalm 63 all week. We chose this psalm for our series a couple of months ago. And we've framed this series not just around learning the Psalms, though that's important, but around praying the Psalms, actually putting these Psalms as prayers on our lips, coming back to them each week, taking just one Psalm a week and coming back to it again and again and again, maybe morning and evening, meditating on it, reading it, coming back to it again. And so we chose a variety of different prayers for this series that speak to the variety of our life, our situations that we find ourselves in. A prayer of lament for our suffering, a prayer of confession for the burden of guilt, a prayer of contentment and trust for our anxiety and our worry. And I specifically remember thinking Psalm 63 is such a good psalm for this series to pray because it has this beautiful, like poetic language all throughout it. I think about the line from verse 7. It says, "I sing in the shadow of your wings." Like that's just such a beautiful image to contemplate in prayer this week. Or verse 3, "Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you." That seemed like something that would be helpful and encouraging for us to pray this week, and hopefully it is. But much like St. Augustine's quote, I have found this psalm to be equally, if not much more, challenging than encouraging for me this week. Because David prays some things in here that will challenge you if you choose to pray this psalm this week. At least for me, I have come to the conclusion that I do not desire God like David desires God. And that challenges me. I do not desire God the way that David desires God. But I want to. I want to want God more than I do. And I want you to want God more than you do. And if nothing else, I hope that as you read and hear and pray and meditate on Psalm 63 this week, I hope your appetite for God is stirred and awakened, and that you can pray David's words honestly as your own. The Psalms, we've been saying, train us in a life of conversation with God. They give us language to relate to the living God. They teach and school and inform us how we might speak and relate and live in conversation with God. And Psalm 63 is no different, but Psalm 63 is also doing something else. It is training our desires, where we aim the desires of our restless heart. And so I want to work our way through this psalm, asking two questions. First, what do you desire? And then second, how do you deepen your desire for God? So first, what do you desire? David writes this: "You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water." For context, David is writing from the wilderness. And I was prepping a great joke all week about how his context is not that dissimilar to our context with no rain, and then last night it rained. And so you'll just have to imagine the joke was the best joke you've ever heard. But this is probably the time when David, he was out in the wilderness a few times in his life. This is probably the time when he was running from his son, Absalom, who had conspired to overthrow him and take the throne for himself. We gotta get some context in 2 Samuel 15, which says, "A messenger came and told David, 'The hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom.' Then David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, 'Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword.' And so David flees out into the wilderness. He's no longer in the comfort of the palace and the city. He's out in really the middle of nowhere with his closest allies, running and hiding from his enemies. And he references his enemies in the last few verses, most likely with them in mind as he's praying to God. He says, 'Those who want to kill me will be destroyed. They will go down to the depths of the earth. They will be given over to the sword, become food for jackals, but the king,'— that's him— "will rejoice in God. All who swear by God will glory in him, while the mouths of liars will be silent." So David is out hiding in the desert from his own son who has betrayed him and usurped his throne and now wants him dead. You thought your family drama was bad. This is next level. But it's this context that causes him to write these words: "You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water." David uses this metaphor of the wilderness to really describe the state of his own heart. He's desperate. And isn't it interesting that when we are desperate, so often it's the challenges of life that cause us to turn to prayer. It's the struggle or the wrestle or the questioning, the challenges of life that pull us or push us back into prayer when we feel lost or alone, dry or empty. We are driven towards prayer. And there's just like this inverse kind of correlation between our desperation for God and how comfortable we are. It's almost impossible to be both. To be really comfortable and really desperate for God at the same time. Which is one reason I think it's so easy for us in a culture that values comfort so highly to just become slowly over time apathetic towards God. Maybe we're too comfortable. Maybe we have pursued comfort at the expense of God. But David is out in the wilderness and he's desperate. But he's desperate for one thing. And it's not comfort or material blessings or even security. It's for God himself. This is not just a beautiful poetic prayer about desiring God. This is a desperate, honest, pure prayer. Notice the verbs. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you. There's a desperation in this prayer, this deep longing, not just for what God might give him, but for God himself, for God alone. And this is consistent throughout so much of David's life and his prayers and his life as a whole. I think of Psalm 27. It's another one of these beautiful poetic prayers that we sing and hear and maybe even have memorized at some point. But would you just receive these words as a challenge today? David writes, "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord, to seek him in his temple." He's after one thing he desires, just one, God himself, his presence with him. What do you want? It's a really simple question, but it probably has some layers to it, if you're honest. Most of us are like a mixed bag of desires. We want all sorts of things. We want God, we want more of God, but we also want a lot of other things. What do you want? It's a question Jesus asks often in his own ministry. To a couple of disciples who begin kind of following behind him, Jesus turns around and says, "What do you want?" To a disabled man of 38 years, Jesus asks, "What do you want?" To blind Bartimaeus, he asks, "What do you want?" Again and again, the same question. And the author and philosopher James K.A. Smith says, this is the question beneath all other questions we ask. He says this, "What do you want?" That's the question. It's the first, last, and most fundamental question of Christian discipleship. It's the question that is buried under almost every other question Jesus asks each of us. "Will you come and follow me?" is another version of "What do you want?" Jesus doesn't encounter Matthew and John or you and me and ask, "What do you know?" He doesn't even ask, "What do you believe?" He asks, "What do you want?" This is the most incisive, piercing question Jesus can ask of us, precisely because we are what we want. Our wants and longings and desires are at the core of our identity, the wellspring from which our actions and behavior flow. What do you want? It's the question underneath almost every other question. And there is some really fascinating research and psychology around this theme of desire and what we want and why we want different things. How our desires inform our life and our decision-making and really the trajectory of where we go in life. For a long time, coming out of the Enlightenment period, there was this belief that people are primarily driven by what they know, that we are our minds are like the core of who we are, that we are thinking beings. We are rational, we value rational thought and logic and reason, and those are all a high value in our society to this day. But the working theory was that if we could just teach and train and inform people about what was right and good for them, they would act accordingly. That we are driven by what we know to be true and right, and that our desires would really follow our logic or our thinking. It's this idea that if I know something is bad for me, I won't want it, right? But isn't it true that you could watch an entire documentary or read a whole book about how bad fast food is for your body and the environment and the animals, and then find yourself there in the drive-thru again, ordering a matzo burger combo with those sweet potato fries and that spicy chipotle mayo. It's so good. It's so bad and so good all at the same time. Good and right information is important, but they are no match for our desires, right? When we want something, we want it. And the former University of Virginia psychologist and author Jonathan Haidt, he offers this helpful metaphor to kind of paint the picture of how this dynamic works in each of us. This kind of rational and emotional dynamic. He says, our emotional side is like an elephant, a 6-ton elephant. And our rational side is like a rider who sits on top of the elephant. And while the tiny rider may think he's in control and feel like he's in control for a moment, anytime there is a disagreement about which way to go, the rider doesn't stand a chance. The 6-ton elephant knows exactly where he's going, and there's no stopping him. He is completely overmatched. In other words, our lives are directed by our hearts or our affections, or as James K.A. Smith says, our loves, like what we truly love. And usually we then use like logic to rationalize that desire or that bad choice we made. Have you ever done that? Like you bought something, you know it's not a good purchase. You probably shouldn't have done it. You don't have the funds, but you wanted it so bad. And so you buy it. And then immediately you start justifying it with logic. I could get the funds later. It's not that bad. You start to rationalize a desire that turned into a bad decision. This is why discipleship is not just about learning new information. Learning is important. Knowing Scripture is, like, I want us to know Scripture. But until we examine what we actually desire and long for, another Bible study probably will not help. We have to get down to the levels of our desires and what we long for and thirst for and hunger for. And the problem for most, if not all of us, is that we try to satisfy our deepest desires with something or someone else. Our restless heart leads us in all the wrong places. I remember hearing a story from someone who works in like the downtown east side of Vancouver. This person works with all sorts of people struggling with addiction and mental health. And I remember him sharing that he had asked someone who was addicted to hard drugs, a particular hard drug, how he felt when he took that drug. And he described the experience, this man, as like a warm hug. And he said that for so many people, underneath their addiction, underneath this behavior was really this deeper desire, this beautiful God-given desire to be known and loved and embraced. But it was misdirected into the wrong place, a desire God can only meet. The problem is not our desire. It's when our desire gets misplaced. And that's an extreme example. We know how destructive an addiction can be in someone's life. But the same dynamic shows up in our lives in much more maybe subtle or hidden ways. The desire to be known, loved, secure, significant, fulfilled. These are good desires God has placed within us. We may, though, look for affirmation from financial success or career achievement. We may look for a sense of significance in our following online. We may look for intimacy in just another relationship, one after another after another. Or even just this sense of freedom and adventure through another vacation, another trip, another project. None of these things are bad. But they were never meant to carry the weight of your desires, your deepest desires. And for David, in his lowest moments, in his most desperate moments, he's out in the wilderness. He turns to God. His desire is aimed entirely at God. He says this in verse 9, I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. I was thinking about that particular verse this week, and the image that came to my mind was when one of my kids accidentally get hurt. We've had a few scary moments in our family, as probably any family has. One time my oldest son fell down our stairs. our middle son pinched his finger in the door so bad. There's a few others. I'll spare you the details. I promise we're doing our best. But in those moments, when they're hurt and I go to pick them up, they don't just grab on. They cling. Cling is not even strong enough. They squeeze the life out of me like a koala. They're just wrapped around, clinging. And at the same time, I'm upholding them. I'm holding them. They're clinging to me. And that's the picture David gives us of his life with God. He's clinging. He's holding on for dear life, just as God is holding him up. I don't desire God like David does, but I want to. What do you want? Because what you want, what you desire, is at the core of your identity. It will inform the trajectory of your life, what you do and don't do. It will inform who you become. Which leads us to a very important question. How do we deepen our desire for God? And David's prayer in Psalm 63 offers some insight. He says this, I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. On my bed, I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. Notice just a theme in this text. Notice what's going on here. David is remembering, he's bringing to mind how he has experienced God in the past, what he knows to be true. Specifically, his experience of God in the sanctuary or the place of worship for him. David has tasted and seen and beheld God in a profound way through worship. Listen to the language. My lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live. In your name, I will lift up my hands. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. These are all simple acts of worship. We've done most of these things already here today. Why is David's desire for God so strong? Because David is a worshiper. David knows how to worship. He has a rhythm of worship built into his life. And notice it's not just in the sanctuary. He says, on my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. David is a worshiper. And worship trains us to desire God. Worship reorients and reshapes our affections, our longing for God. This is why we gather together each week. It's why it's so formative and important for us to gather. And it's why the church has gathered forever, weekly, this rhythm of worship. It is not just this religious activity that we do because we do it. It is not to appease God as though he needs our worship to be satisfied. Worship forms us to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Again, James K.A. Smith, he puts it this way. Worship is the arena in which God recalibrates our hearts, reforms our desires, and rehabituates our loves. Worship isn't just something we do. It is where God does something to us. How do we deepen our desire for God? We worship. We make it a habit to worship, to behold God. First thing in the morning, last thing in the evening, to behold him, to sing, to lift our hands, to praise him, to glorify him, to turn towards him, to pray, build in a rhythm of prayer. Our habits do something to us and in us. Or put another way, our habits form us. Let me give you an example. One of the first things I think about when I wake up is my coffee. I imagine I'm not the only one in this room. And I remember when I started to drink coffee, maybe you do as well. I was in college. I never really liked the taste of coffee, but everyone was drinking coffee, and it's kind of what we do. And so I started to drink coffee, and I didn't really like it at first. I did not like the taste. So I would dump all kinds of like cream and sugar into it. And it was just 1 cup to start. Then at some point, maybe around exam season, because people in college just brag about like how little sleep they've had and how much coffee they've drank. And so I probably upped it to 2 around then. And it's a slippery slope from there, isn't it? Into like, third wave single origin pour-overs that require a large amount of time in the morning and a large amount of my income to keep up. But I'm there, and I'm doing it. And some of you can't imagine life without your 3 or 4 cups a day or whatever you're at. But you didn't start that way. No one does. My love and your love for coffee did not begin there. It grew. Somewhere along the way, we made it a habit. And that habit formed what we desire, where now it's like, I can't do a day without coffee. You can, but you've been formed by your own habit to desire a certain thing. And when we make it a regular rhythm in our lives to worship God, whether we always feel like it or not, that rhythm reshapes us. It is literally forming you to love God. That habit shapes what you long for. God does something to us as we worship Him. God reforms and reshapes and reorients us. We begin to long for Him, hunger for Him, thirst for Him, like a dry and parched land where there is no water. We just come in desperate for God because we have a rhythm of seeking Him, pursuing Him, coming after His presence. Eugene Peterson, who planted and pastored a church for 29 years, he wrote countless books. He said this one thing that has always stuck with me. He said, the most important thing a pastor does is stand in a pulpit every Sunday and say, quote, let us worship God. That's the most important thing we do together. We come into God's presence and we worship. And David's pure and honest desire for God is born out of his worship. He has tasted and seen and beheld and praised God, so much so that he's longing for God again in his most desperate moments. It's his experience of God's presence that has formed his desire for more of God. And so let me just close with this very simple thought. God has made himself available to us to experience, not just intellectually, not just rationally, emotionally, like we come into his presence. He has invited us to come into his presence and to seek him and to pursue him, and he has made himself available to us. There's this great story from John chapter 7 where Jesus is at the Feast of Tabernacles, it was called. And it was this week-long celebration of how God had provided for the Israelites when they were in the wilderness. Remember, they're wandering in the wilderness and God provides manna for them. He provides water from a rock. Like God was providing again and again and again. And so the Israelites had this week-long celebration where they remembered God's provision for them in the wilderness. And as this feast is happening, the people are celebrating the act of God from centuries ago. Jesus stands up. It's the very last day. It says, on the last and greatest day of the festival, Jesus stood and said in a loud voice, let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them. In its context, this was like a scandalous moment, so much so that the people literally want to kill him. They start conspiring how to get him killed. Because while they're all remembering and reminiscing about the time when God provided for them water from a rock, Jesus stands up and says, if you're thirsty, come to me and drink. He is making a profound claim here. He's actually making 2 profound claims. The first is this, that the only place we are ever truly satisfied is in Jesus. That our deepest longings are met in the person of Jesus. The only way our thirst will be quenched is by him. The only place our restless heart truly comes to rest is in Jesus. But the second claim is this: it's an open invitation. Jesus says, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink." It's an open invitation for anyone and everyone to come and seek him and pursue him. Jesus works by invitation. You might remember him saying, "If anyone wants to be my disciple, come follow me." It's an open invitation, anyone and everyone. You might remember him saying, "If anyone is tired or weary, come to me and find rest." His invitation is wide. Are you thirsty? Come to him. Are you hungry? Come and be satisfied. Are you tired? Come and find rest. It's an open invitation, but the decision is ours. He does not force us. He does not coerce us. He does invite us. David says, "You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water." I don't desire God like that, but I want to. And maybe we can move together one step in that direction this week as we put this prayer on our lips, because Jesus has made himself available to you and I. His life, death, and resurrection has made a way for you and I to come to him, to drink from the well that never runs dry. So will you come to him this week? Will you seek him? Will you cling to him? Will you worship him? And in doing so, discover that his love is indeed better than life.